Mr. Williams, and a pleasant good afternoon to all viewing this broadcast via whatever means. This afternoon, my presentation will take a different format. I have chosen to adopt the CMO's and Mr. Samuel's presentation format. So today I will do a PowerPoint presentation, hopefully to help me explain my presentation. Now, by now, most of us will be aware that we have new regulations. I've indicated in previous briefing that the old regulations would have expired on the 8th of August. And so we have new regulations that has been approved by His Excellency. And these regulations come into effect from today, the 8th of August, and runs until the 29th of August. Now, these regulations have some fundamental differences. There are some fundamental differences between these regulations and the previous ones. We continue to see further easing of the restrictions. And so today I will highlight some of the new provisions as well as to highlight the restrictions that have been lifted. Now, there has been some confusion in the past about what is a public place. Now, this regulation has sought to clear that confusion, and so it has defined public place with respect to the wearing of masks. Now, we know the wearing of masks continues to be an important aspect of the prevention of the spread of the disease, and so everything is being done to encourage our people to wear the mask. Public place is defined as an indoor or outdoor area, whether privately or publicly owned, to which the public has access by right or by invitation, expressed or implied, whether by payment of money or not. And it includes shopping centers, supermarkets, pharmacies, banks, utility departments, bars, drinking places and restaurants, hotels, schools, and all other educational institutions, hospitals, whether privately or publicly operated, churches or other religious establishments, public transportation, community centers, government offices, public markets, and other places or buildings of all types accessible to the public. So the definition is very broad, and it almost appears that once you leave your house, you're in a public place. Now, the regulation provides some exceptions to the wearing of masks. We have heard persons who are complaining that they cannot wear the mask for various reasons, and those were taken in consideration. And so the new regulations have created some exceptions for those persons who have underlying conditions. And the exceptions in Regulation 15.2 says a person shall not be required to wear a mask if he or she is under the age of 3 years old. So that will take care of Mr. Williams' concern whether the first grade and second grade should wear a mask. If he or she suffers with a disability, cognitive impairment, dementia, asthma, chronic obstructive lung disease, or other similar health condition, or if he or she is within a private space, including a private vehicle. So these are the exceptions to the wearing of masks. If you're under the age of 3 years, you don't have to wear a mask. If you suffer from a medical condition listed here, or any disability, or if you are in your private space, if you're in your home or in your yard, or if you're in your private vehicle and you're out in a public place. Now, this particular regulation has created a lot of public discourse, but as I mentioned before, everything that is done in these regulations to protect public health. And so we recognize that in order to encourage persons to wear their masks, we have to create some deterrents find a way to make persons want to wear the mask. I will not say what I was going to say, but the regulation provides for fixed penalty notices, or what we call tickets, to be issued to persons who refuse to wear their masks. And the regulation on the regulation 22.2, it says a police officer may issue a fixed penalty notice to any person who contravenes the provisions of section 15 in relation to the wearing of a face mask in public places. And I define public places. Now, what this is doing is to creating some consequence for persons who refuse to wear their mask in these public places. And the fixed penalty that would be applied in this case would be $500. Now, we've been mentioning that there was a fine of $5,000. That $5,000 fine still remains in the regulation, but this is if you refuse to pay the $500 ticket and you have to go before the court. The magistrate now has the discretion, now has the power to increase that $500 fine to up to $5,000 and to imprisonment for 6 months. So you have an opportunity to pay the fixed penalty of $500, and there's a period of 10 days that is given to pay that fine. And if you refuse to pay that fine, then you're taken before the court, where the magistrate has the power to increase that penalty. Of course, these penalties can be avoided. It is not our intention to see anyone having to pay any of these fines if you just simply wear your mask and you don't have to pay any fine. Now, with respect to the easing of restrictions, we've seen some adjustments to an adjustment to the curfew hours. The curfew has been adjusted to begin at 2 a.m. until 4:59 a.m. This means that bars and restaurants can operate until 1 a.m. when they must be closed in order to allow their staff and patrons to adhere to the curfew. So the curfew now extends from 12 midnight to 2 a.m. And so the bars can also extend their operations up to 1 a.m. when they must be closed so that their staff could get home on time. However, the protocols still remain in place. All the requirements still remain in place. The patrons, all persons, expected to adhere to social and physical distancing protocols. All persons must adhere to hygiene protocols. No more than 8 members of the same household should be in close proximity to each other while you're in the bar or restaurant. And no more than 2 persons who are not of the same household shall be in close proximity or shall group together or share a table. The spacing between the tables shall allow for a minimum of 6 feet between persons, and all persons, including the restaurant staff, shall wear a face mask covering their nose and mouth, except, of course, when they are eating. So all the protocols remain in place. The only thing that has changed is the length of time that you could remain at the bar. Restrictions on social events. I've been getting a lot of questions from some entertainers whether they could have their functions now. I would say there is a little bit of leeway here, but the regulation remains that no person shall host, attend, or visit a private party, a banquet, ball, or reception, or any other type of social event, except with the written permission of the Commissioner of Police in consultation with the COVID-19 task force. So this suggests that there is a possibility that you could have some events, but of course, there would have to be some consultation with the COVID-19 task force. Then the commissioner would grant the permission having consulted with the task force. So there's some easing there in that regard. Education and religious instructions. We've heard from the Ministry of Education a while ago. All educational places of instruction shall remain closed. However, this regulation does not prohibit any activity referred to that is done by electronic means, electronic or virtual means, so that if you're having your educational activity by virtual means. That, of course, is encouraged. The opening of educational places to facilitate external examinations. CXC, for example, you can open schools to facilitate CXC examinations. And the opening of public sector early childhood education centers. So those can be open, and we heard that as of Monday. As from Monday, some centers have been granted certification to operate. So early childhood education centers, they can operate, and so we expect next week to see some of those centers in operation. Now this, I would end here today in the interest of time. There are some other aspects of the regulation that we need to highlight, but we cannot go through all because we do not have sufficient time. But in subsequent briefings, those other aspects would be highlighted. We just want to remind us all to keep our distancing, continue to sanitize, and to keep ourselves safe. Thank you.